to be like, it has to get straight to the point. Like, straight to the point. Okay, this, where's my phone? Right, my phone is there. Okay, can you please set the timer for 15 minutes?
Right.
I'm gonna do we're doing an experiment. Mihai told me that we need to make our videos shorter because otherwise they're tuluduru, as in too long, then bother to read. At least videos are like that. Well, no, it's true. I mean, we haven't been making them too long, so people aren't patient enough to watch till the end. And I understand, and that's fair. So this is me practicing. Can you please set it to 15? Because I'm willing to go as much as 20, but that's about it. So, okay, so I've been
Start?
Yeah, you can start it. Okay. And so this is an experiment series. It's gonna be comprised of 22 videos because I want to talk about the Arcana cards and the tarot. And because I think like it's the simplest little metaphor for life that's been in use, the whole journey metaphor, and how it's the process that counts and not the destination, and how like a lot of us never really got the point of it, and I never really got the point of it, and I wasn't really sure why I became into tarot until I bought all these decks. Okay, so it's become like, initially I bought them for the art, but then the more I kind of got into them and the more I sort of interacted with the symbolism and became aware of what the 20, it's not 12, I keep saying 12, it's 22 Arcana cards. That is essentially the Fool's Journey, and I've talked about it before in previous videos that were too long for people to watch. So I'm gonna try and make a little short and brief description of it, because I want to show you specific ways in which people kind of visualize the whole concept. So because it's nice, and I think like maybe at the end of this we can do a little you can try it and make that association between the 22 Arcana cards and as many archetypes as we can, because I do think there is some correlation, but okay, so just kind of briefly for people who don't really understand what the notion of tarot is like, initially it was a card game. It was meant to, and it's very much like the poker set, how you have like the kings and queens, and you have the aces, and you have 4 suits, and blah blah blah. And the tarot is very much like that, and poker cards are, I think, a version of that, like a modern, more widely spread version of that. And they were a game. They were initially conceived as a game, and they never really became the divination sort of tool until quite late. And believe it or not, it came from like Protestant clerics and Freemasons. I wrote it down somewhere over here. Was it like, so one of the first people to actually use it as to use tarot as cartomancy, as a divinatory tool, or to sort of assume that they have any use beyond like social amusement, was this guy. Like, one of them was Antoine Cour de Gebelin. It was French anyway. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. Like, I'm not. You're the French expert. You're the French person. So he was a Protestant cleric, and he started assuming that there's some divinatory kind of properties to the tarot, can be used as such, and around like 1780, something like that. So and it kind of became an idea that circulated around the 18th century, until some clerics associated it with like it being a tool of the devil, and being something that's very much anti the Christian creed, the proper. But it's it's funny because it came from clerics, and then it was condemned by clerics anyway. So but before that, it didn't really have any use. The tarot was a game. After that, the tarot became associated with something else, and it was, for it to evolve relatively quickly in like the past 2 or 3 decades to become something that it's used in like, it's a thing of hermeneutics, it's a thing of mysticism, it's a thing of magic, it's a thing of like and then, you know, if you check the Wikipedia page and all this information is from there, it's been used in Jungian psychology, and this is something you're familiar with because you've been reading about it. Because Jung assumes that a lot of archetypes, or like there's an association between the Arcana, which the Arcana, by the way, means secret, mystery. So the major Arcana, the 22 cards that I'm about to talk about, are those of the great mystery, the great mysteries of life, so to speak. And, you know, just to say that I want to quote this because this is the way I've used the Arcana, the tarot, and specifically the Arcana card, and the way I kind of like made associations between the story of the Fool's Journey and my own life was like in similar fashion. I used them as an apparatus capable of tapping into the absolute knowledge of the unconscious and the individuation. I don't know. I used the metaphor to look at the elements within my own life, and then shit made sense. So I used the information. So I kind of wanted to show you people some of the renditions, and I like traditionally. So there's this really old. Right. Let us briefly put that on pause so I can attend to the 7-year-old who cannot sleep. Okay, and we're back. Right. Yeah, no, you can't. Every time he closes his eyes, he hears something like a drum sound. Anyway, right. So, like there's this, one of the oldest and the most widely used tarot decks in the world is called the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, and that the very classical depiction of the Fool there was of this man. It was kind of like, has his little stick with a little bundle of things, and he's just like ready to jump off a cliff into the unknown with his little white dog and this little white like rose and stuff like that. And I want to see if I can find, because the thing is, my depictions, I think the closest that I can get to that depiction is so this, like the deck that I'm about to show you, like this is the most traditional rendition of the Fool. Now you see like a stylized version here, and this deck is by Ciolo Thompson, the Line Strider's Journey, like this, and this is the book. And here you don't have the little dog, but you have more or less the same idea. So if you have a good look, you see his little bundle, he's about to jump off, he has his little white flower in his hand. And I'm going to show you versions of this, because you'll see that it's very repetitive. I have this, so this is the Tarot of the Cloisters. Here you have a pretty similar rendition as well. A guy coming at the very edge of a precipice with his little bundle, ready to kind of like, there's nuances to this. The whole point is that this is the Fool is number 0 within the Arcana. And it's number 0 because it hasn't a designated spot within the Fool's Journey. It's that energy of wanting to leap into something new, to discover something new, to basically you have the world at your feet, and you need a little bit of naivety and innocence to leap yourself forward, because it represents that leap of faith. So let me show you what it looks like in different cards. This is the Ukiyo-e Tarot so the art is done by Koji Furuta. I have like similarly, here you actually have the little dog. You have a look over there. And I'll just show them to you first, and then we can really kind of talk about the symbolism behind it. I like, this is, let's do this one, because this one's nice. This one's the Wildwood Tarot. Here you see him as the Wanderer. You have this similar sort of thing. You're like, they're all always kind of like at the edge of a cliff, ready to jump into something. And the reason behind that is kind of, I think the reason behind that lies within like I have my own story that's very much incorporates the Fool card. This is Mystic Monday's Tarot by Grace Duong. This is also a nice rendition. It's a girl. It doesn't really matter. The Fool can always be both a boy and a girl, because it doesn't really, the kind of the feminine or masculine energy behind it doesn't matter. You can it's the cardinal energy of initiating something new. It's a new beginning. And you need a little bit of, well, like, and this brings me back to my story. When I moved to Scotland, what, 5 or 6 years ago, and it was autumn, and I remember speaking to a friend of mine who was already here, and I asked him, okay, like, I'm about to move to Scotland myself. What do I need to know? And like, what advice do you have to give me? And he said, well, in order to kind of make this move, he said, you need, I think, two things. And one of them, he said, was ignorance, and the other is luck. And I feel that really comprised within the notion of the fool, because if you know everything that sort of lies ahead, and God, like, if I knew everything that was gonna lie ahead, my arrival in Scotland was horrible. It was horrible because I had no job and I had no place to stay, and me and my boyfriend at the time, we just had some money that we managed to spend. We got here, the first thing that happened was I got sick. And we lived in this like budget hotel, but money was running out quick. We ended up spending like one night out on the buses and like walking from one part of the city to a completely opposite part of the city just to take a tram back to that part of the city, but we didn't really know at the time. It was horrible, this amazing massive stress, until we found the job, and we're like at every little corner of the, like at every moment of this turn, of this massively dramatic turn, we thought like, shit, we're gonna run out of money, we're gonna have to go home and meet defeat. And this was incredibly hard and wasteful, and like we spent over a year trying to earn that money, and some of it was inherited, and you know, you come across inheritances twice and stuff. Like it was terrible. And then he got a job, and we stayed, and here I am 5 years later, and like a depression, insomnia later, about 3 jobs, and you know, and so I thought back to my friends' words, and that's exactly what I needed, was exactly to not know what lies ahead, because if I had known what lies ahead, I would have never done it. I would have never done it, because it was just too terrifying. So there's that. There's the tarot metaphor for the journey assumes that the fool is first and foremost is a wanderer, is someone that's ready to take on a journey of development, of becoming something greater than he was at the beginning. And I think that's the reason behind that, is that in some depictions the fool is actually considered the beggar. Like his clothes are very ragged. There's this suggestion that there's a lower status to the fool, that as he kind of journeys through the journey, his status increases, because you know, most people assume that the journey of life is a journey of knowledge, but some assume that also with that actually come forms of abundance that increase your social standing to some degree, or the level of financial security that you have, or grounding within, you know, the material world where you actually have things as well. And but if we think about, so there's several associations. I want to show you. This one is another version of the journeyman. You have this. It's funny because he actually, in this depiction of it, the cliff that he jumps off of is assumed to be his master's head, and he is an apprentice craftsman. He's finished his apprenticeship actually, and he's off to make a leap of his own into the world where he can now follow his profession and start working, and you know, develop his skill in the actual world away from the protection of the master. And that's kind of cool as well. But in order to do that, you need, so if you're not super aware of what lies ahead of you, but you want to go and do stuff, there's this implication that you need to take a leap of faith. As in, assume that if you jump off a cliff into the unknown, for whoever has not seen Frozen 2, watch Frozen 2, because there's this great incorporation of the notion of the fool. Literally, when Elsa's like, is it Anna? Which one's the one that does the icy thing? Elsa. When Elsa's like, she's gonna go and jump off, she's going into the unknown because there's this voice calling out for her, and she wants to know what it is. And that's exactly what the fool is. It might be schizophrenia. But it's also, you know, it's also that leap of faith. Like, I want to go and see what it is, even though I'm quite comfortable where I am now. And you know, if I stand back and kind of assess my situation, there's nothing wrong with being here. It's just a small universe, and you want to make it larger, because you can't stand still. So there's this thing at the edge of the precipice. So some people, you know, some people call the fool the journeyman, someone who's gonna jump into the journey, but some people call the fool the idiot. Like, it's literally with that.
You still have 2 minutes.
I still have 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go through all this very quickly. Like, some people call the fool the idiot, as in someone who's like, obviously he's gonna be tousled around by the journey. He's not gonna make it because he just doesn't know enough, and that means that he's recklessly throwing himself at things. And I don't like that. What I like about the fool is the opposite, the opposite connotation of it. It's the notion that he is everyman. Everyone starts off as the fool, and they go into this journey of looking at things. And the nuance that we haven't touched upon at all is that of the fool as the joker, and I like that one a lot, and I think you like that one a lot. And I've been looking at that connotation a little bit. This might go a little bit over 20 minutes, but it's fine. Plus, we had Antares' interruption, so
2 minutes until 15 minutes.
Oh, right, we have plenty of time. Okay, and you'll like this one, I think, and we're gonna end on this one. I had a look online, and there's another association between the fool as opposed to the beggar, the vagabond, the wanderer, and the wild man, every man. It could be everyone that kind of starts off on something with lack of knowledge. But there was this particular reading of the fool that's called, like, it's from North American culture, native North American culture. There's this concept of heyoka. Heyoka is the sacred clown of the, I'm gonna say Lakota or Lakota people, I'm not sure. These are the Great Plains of North America, and their assumption was that you can only be Heyoka, so the sacred clown, if you've seen the Thunderbirds. And the Thunderbirds, you know the totem poles?
Yeah.
You usually have birds somewhere on the top. So that's the Thunderbird. It's like it's a sacred deity, so it's a sort of sacred knowledge. If you see the Thunderbird, you now become the sacred clown. The sacred clown is the person in society who's allowed to he's allowed to say things opposite as what other people, or do things opposite of what other people do them, like, because he's not bound by social propriety. He's not bound by hierarchies, by established hierarchies and things like that. And this is the Joker component of it. He can use comedy to reveal truths about how reality it really is like, and start from that position to really learn the truth about what's around and make the truth apparent to other people. And I like it because there's power in that. And I think the power within that also reveals the power of the fool as the initiator. You can't really launch yourself into a journey of discovery or growth or anything like that if you don't make a little fun of your lack of knowledge. Because otherwise you're going to paralyze yourself into stagnation, and you're just not going to do it. And there's always that sort of, I could have not left Romania, and I could have avoided the immense discomfort of the actual transition here, and a lot of that I've gone through, like, developing my depression and insomnia. But then I would have had to stay home, and that's a very limited and limiting universe in itself. I'll show you another rendition. It's fun because this he's on a cat. Which is that, you don't normally why does the fool usually have a white flower? Because that's purity and innocence. And why does the fool usually have his little white dog? Because that's loyalty and protection. Normally the dog would hold him back from falling off the precipice of the off the cliff, but he goes anyway, and under the assumption that there are some forms of protection allowed him on his journey, but also that his innocence and his naivety actually are the preconditions for his growth and for his development and for the knowledge he gains as he's kind of guided by different other archetypal figures around that he kind of meets on his journey there, which we're going to talk about in future videos. But I like the fool a lot, because you can't do something without that initial enthusiasm of a new opportunity that you really want to get your hands into, because even though you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, knowing that you're already in a position of power because your eyes are open on the entire journey, and you can see what's genuine and what's not, and you can call out your own you can call yourself out when you're not being genuine, and when you could call other people out when they're not being genuine. And there's that power associated to the Joker that you have associated to the Fool. But there's also the sense of universality. It can be anywhere in the tarot. That's why it's zero. It doesn't belong in a sequence. It's anywhere midway between a beginning and the end of a cycle, and everything's cyclical. And that's also something that the Fool learns along the way. But it's also a card of optimism. Like, you need to be a little bit of a fool, because everyone starts off the same. So it's a great opening card, I think, for the whole journey. But it's also, the whole point of it is that it's not an opening card. It's card 0. And then, so we'll see what that sort of evolves into tomorrow. Did I keep between the 20 minutes? I kept between the 10 minutes. Okay, no, I'm gonna make it short. This is a nice little intro. We're gonna see where this leads tomorrow, because I have to do, or like within the next week, I have to do my homework. I read all about the magician, and tell you guys all about the magician, and show you all the artsy depictions of the magician, which are really cool as well. That's one of the first archetypes that inspires the Fool on his journey.
Yeah, the trickster. That's the archetype. It is an archetype, the trickster.
Well, so this is interesting that you said that, because here in the Animal Wisdom Tarot so this one's illustrated by Ola Leola. Such alliteration. The Fool card is actually the trickster.
Oh.
And then it's associated to the coyote and stuff. But, okay, more on that tomorrow, because we're getting ahead of ourselves. More on that tomorrow.